Red Bull reveals huge payout after Helmut leaves. McLaren reveals big secret for 2026. And all the latest F1 news. What if I told you that McLaren just made a decision that could completely change the future of Formula One? And it's not what you think. While most teams are scrambling to figure out their driver hierarchies and team orders for next season, McLaren just doubled down on something that everyone said was impossible. They proved that you can win both championships without sacrificing either driver, and now they're planning to do it all over again. But here's the thing that's got everyone talking. This isn't just about racing strategy. This is about a fundamental shift in how Formula One teams operate. And McLaren's CEO Zak Brown just confirmed what many considered their worst-kept secret. Let me take you back to just a few weeks ago. Abu Dhabi, the final race of the season. McLaren had already secured the Constructors' Championship 6 races earlier, but the driver's title was still up for grabs. Lando Norris was locked in a battle with Max Verstappen, separated by just 2 points going into the finale. Most teams would have thrown everything behind their championship contender. Team orders, strategic sacrifices from the second driver, whatever it took to secure that title. But McLaren? They did something different. They stuck to what they call their Papaya Rules. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly are these Papaya Rules? It's McLaren's philosophy of complete equality between their drivers. No number 1, no number 2. Just pure racing. Both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri were free to race each other throughout the entire season, even when championships were on the line. And here's what makes this absolutely mind-blowing. It worked. Norris clinched the Drivers' Championship by those 2 points, becoming the first McLaren driver to win the title since Lewis Hamilton back in 2008. He's now the 11th British world champion in Formula One history. But the story gets even more interesting when you look at how this season unfolded. Both Norris and Piastri established healthy points leads at different stages throughout the year. Can you imagine the pressure on the team management? At any point, they could have picked a side, thrown their weight behind one driver, and potentially made their path to the championship easier. Instead, they chose the harder route. They chose fairness. This decision wasn't without controversy. Critics were vocal about McLaren's approach, especially after what happened in Qatar during the penultimate race. Both Piastri and Norris were running first and third when an early safety car came out. In a crucial moment, both drivers failed to pit under that safety car, missing what was essentially a free pit stop opportunity. The result? Verstappen took the victory while Piastri came home second and Norris fourth. Many argued that with proper team coordination and maybe some strategic team orders, McLaren could have secured a 1-2 finish and made the championship fight much more comfortable for Norris, but McLaren stuck to their guns. And now, at the recent FIA prize-giving gala, Zak Brown has confirmed what many suspected, but few dared to believe. They're going to do it all again in 2026. Speaking on stage, Brown expressed his pride in how McLaren secured both championships while maintaining fairness between their drivers. But then he dropped the bombshell. When asked about their approach for next season, he said it's exactly what they plan to do in 2026. Think about what this means for a moment. In a sport where team orders and driver hierarchies have been the norm for decades, McLaren is pioneering a completely different approach. They're proving that you don't have to sacrifice one driver's ambitions for another's success. Brown emphasized how proud he was that McLaren went into the final race with 2 drivers fighting for the World Championship, when everyone said it couldn't be done. This wasn't just a lucky circumstance. This was a deliberate strategy that required incredible trust, not just from the team management, but from the drivers themselves. And speaking of the drivers, both Norris and Piastri have embraced this philosophy completely. Think about the maturity and professionalism required from both of them. They could have easily let inter-team rivalry destroy their championship chances. Instead, they raced hard but fair, allowing the team to achieve something truly special. Andrea Stella, McLaren's team principal, reinforced this point at the same gala. He highlighted how proud the team was of how both drivers conducted themselves, allowing McLaren to go racing with equality and fairness. These aren't just empty words. This represents a fundamental shift in Formula One team philosophy. But let's dig deeper into why this matters so much. Formula One has a long history of controversial team orders. Who can forget Ferrari's infamous Felipe Massa, "Fernando is faster than you" message? Or the countless times when teams have asked drivers to move aside for their teammate. These moments have always left a bitter taste. Fans want to see pure competition, but teams have felt pressured to maximize their championship chances through strategic manipulation. McLaren is showing there's another way. The success of their approach in 2025 has sent shockwaves through the paddock. Other teams are now questioning their own strategies. If McLaren can win both championships without team orders, what does that say about the traditional approach? But here's what makes McLaren's commitment even more remarkable. They're not just talking about continuing this for one more season. They're embedding this philosophy into their team culture for the long term. This isn't a temporary experiment. This is their new identity. The timing of this announcement is also significant. With major regulation changes coming in 2026, teams are reassessing every aspect of their operations. Engine regulations are changing, aerodynamics are being overhauled, and the competitive landscape could shift dramatically. In this environment of uncertainty, McLaren is providing stability and clarity in their driver management approach. For Norris, this confirmation means he can enter the 2026 season as the defending champion without having to worry about political games or team favoritism. He earned his title through pure performance, and he'll defend it the same way. For Piastri, who's shown incredible speed and maturity in his second season, this represents a genuine opportunity to fight for championships without being relegated to a support role. At just 24 years old, he's entering his prime years with the knowledge that his team will give him every chance to succeed. The broader implications for Formula One could be profound. If other teams start adopting similar approaches, we could see a fundamental shift toward more authentic competition. Imagine if every team on the grid operated with complete driver equality. The racing would be pure, unfiltered competition. Of course, there are risks to this approach. What happens if both McLaren drivers are tied on points going into the final race of a season? How do you handle situations where team coordination could benefit one driver significantly over another? These are challenges McLaren will need to navigate. But based on their success in 2025, they seem confident they can handle whatever comes their way. They've proven that trust, fairness, and letting the best driver win on track can deliver championships. As we look ahead to the 2026 season, McLaren's announcement sets up some fascinating storylines. Will other teams follow their lead? How will this approach work with the new regulations? Can they repeat their success while maintaining their principles? One thing is certain. McLaren has fundamentally changed the conversation about how Formula One teams should operate. They've shown that you don't have to choose between winning and fairness. You can have both. In a sport that's often criticized for being too political and strategic, McLaren is bringing back the essence of pure competition. And with Zak Brown's confirmation, they're committing to this approach for years to come. The worst-kept secret is now official. McLaren's Papaya Rules are here to stay, and Formula One might never be the same again. Picture this. After over 2 decades of shaping Formula One history, one of the sport's most influential figures just walked away with a mind-blowing €10 million golden handshake. But here's what nobody's talking about. This exit might reveal something much bigger about the future of Red Bull racing. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most significant departures in modern Formula One history. Helmut Marko, the man who discovered Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel, has officially left Red Bull after more than 20 years. And according to reports from German publication Bild, he's walking away with his entire 2026 salary as a severance package. That's approximately €10 million. Now, before we get into the juicy details of this massive payout, let me ask you something. How much would you pay someone who helped your company win multiple world championships? Because that's exactly what Helmut Marko did for Red Bull Racing. This story gets more interesting the deeper we dig. The timing of this announcement is absolutely fascinating. Just days after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, where Red Bull narrowly lost the Constructors' Championship to McLaren, news broke that Marko's future was in serious doubt. Then, boom. Tuesday morning, Red Bull GmbH makes it official. But let's rewind and understand who Helmut Marko really is. This isn't just some corporate executive getting a golden parachute. We're talking about a former racing driver who made 9 Formula One starts himself and won the legendary Le Mans 24 Hours race. His racing career was cut short in 1972 when debris from Ronnie Peterson's car pierced his visor at the French Grand Prix, causing him to lose sight in his left eye. That injury could have ended his involvement in motorsport forever. Instead, it redirected his path toward becoming one of the most successful talent scouts in Formula One history. Think about this for a moment. In the brutal world of Formula One, where careers can end before they even begin, Marko had an almost supernatural ability to spot future world champions. Sebastian Vettel, who became the youngest world champion in Formula One history at just 23 years old. Max Verstappen, who went on to win 4 consecutive drivers' titles. These weren't lucky guesses. This was systematic, strategic talent identification at the highest level. The €10 million figure isn't just a random number thrown around by the media. According to the Bild report, this represents Marko's full annual salary for 2026. Think about that. Red Bull is essentially paying him for a year's worth of work he won't be doing. In corporate terms, that's an acknowledgement of value that goes far beyond normal business relationships. Red Bull calls this payment a sign of appreciation for Marko's achievements in discovering drivers like Vettel and Verstappen. But here's where it gets really interesting. This kind of payout usually signals that a departure wasn't entirely voluntary, or that the company is trying to ensure a smooth transition without any potential legal complications. What makes this even more intriguing is Marko's business interests outside of Formula One. The man owns 4 luxury hotels in his hometown of Graz, Austria. Company's house documents officially list his occupation as hotelier, not motorsport advisor. This isn't someone who needed to stay at Red Bull for financial security. This was someone who stayed because he was passionate about the sport and incredibly good at what he did. The statement from Red Bull CEO Oliver Mintzlaff reveals just how significant this departure really is. He didn't just say goodbye to an employee. He acknowledged that Marko's exit marks the end of an extraordinary era. Over 20 years of incomparable contributions to Red Bull Racing and the entire Red Bull Motorsport family. Here's what really stands out from Mintzlaff's comments. He mentions that Marko played a decisive role in all key strategic decisions that made Red Bull Racing what it is today. We're not talking about someone who just spotted talent and stepped back. This was someone who was involved in the fundamental strategic direction of one of the most successful teams in modern Formula One. The impact extends far beyond just Red Bull Racing. Mintzlaff specifically mentions that Marko's instinct for exceptional talent left a lasting impact on Formula One as a whole. Think about how many young drivers came through the Red Bull Junior program under Marko's guidance. Some went on to race for Red Bull, others ended up at different teams, but the ripple effects of his talent identification spread throughout the entire grid. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why is Marko leaving now? His own statement provides some clues. He mentions that narrowly missing out on the World Championship this season moved him deeply and made it clear that now was the right moment to end this chapter. That's a fascinating insight into the mindset of someone who spent decades chasing perfection in Formula One. Red Bull lost the Constructors' Championship to McLaren by just 14 points. After years of dominating both championships, suddenly they found themselves in second place in the team standings while Max Verstappen secured his 4th consecutive driver's title. For someone as competitive as Marko, that kind of near miss could indeed serve as a catalyst for major life decisions. The timing also coincides with significant changes happening throughout Formula One. We're approaching the 2026 regulation changes that will reshape the sport. New engine regulations, new aerodynamic rules, new technical challenges. For someone who's been in the sport for 6 decades, as Marko mentioned in his statement, maybe this represents a natural breaking point. What's particularly interesting is how this departure was handled. Mintzlaff mentions having a long and intensive conversation with Marko, gaining the impression that the timing felt right for him to take this step. That doesn't sound like a firing or a forced retirement. It sounds like someone who decided on his own terms when to walk away from something he'd dedicated his life to. The €10 million payout, then, becomes less about buying silence or avoiding legal complications, and more about genuine appreciation for someone who fundamentally changed the trajectory of Red Bull racing. When you consider that Red Bull has won multiple constructors and drivers' championships, generated hundreds of millions in prize money, and built a global brand partly through their Formula One success, €10 million starts to look like a bargain. But here's what this really tells us about the future of Red Bull racing. Losing someone with Marko's institutional knowledge and talent identification skills creates a massive void. You can't just hire someone else and expect them to have the same instincts for spotting future world champions. That kind of ability develops over decades of experience and countless interactions with young drivers. The question becomes, how does Red Bull replace someone irreplaceable? They'll likely restructure their talent identification programs, possibly bringing in multiple people to handle different aspects of what Marko did single-handedly. But there's always a risk that something gets lost in translation when you go from one decision-maker to a committee approach. This departure also signals a generational shift within Red Bull racing. Marko represented the old guard, someone who bridged the gap between Red Bull's early days as a Formula One team and their current status as a championship-winning organization. His exit means that institutional memory and those early strategic decisions now live primarily in documentation rather than in the minds of people still working for the team. From a financial perspective, Red Bull's willingness to pay this golden handshake demonstrates their current financial strength and their recognition of Marko's contributions. But it also raises questions about their long-term strategic planning. Did they have succession plans in place for someone as crucial as Marko? Or are they now scrambling to figure out how to maintain their competitive edge in talent identification? The broader Formula One community will be watching closely to see how this impacts Red Bull's future performance. Marko wasn't just identifying talent for Red Bull racing. He was also involved in decisions about which drivers to promote, which ones to loan out to other teams, and how to structure driver development programs. Those decisions have ripple effects throughout the sport. Looking ahead, this creates opportunities for other teams to potentially poach talent or restructure their own development programs to compete more effectively with Red Bull's historically dominant approach. If Red Bull stumbles in their talent identification without Marko's guidance, teams like Mercedes, McLaren, and Ferrari could benefit significantly. The €10 million golden handshake ultimately represents more than just a financial transaction. It's Red Bull acknowledging that some contributions to an organization go far beyond normal employment relationships. Helmut Marko didn't just work for Red Bull. He helped create the culture and strategic approach that made them world champions. As we watch Red Bull Racing navigate this transition, the true measure of Marko's impact will become clear. Can they maintain their competitive edge in talent identification? Will their strategic decision-making remain as sharp without his institutional knowledge? And perhaps most importantly, will they continue discovering the next generation of Formula One superstars? What do you think about this massive payout? Is €10 million appropriate recognition for someone who helped discover multiple world champions? Or is it an excessive golden handshake? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more Formula One analysis and breaking news coverage. Picture this. A 21-year-old rookie driver gets the call every Formula One hopeful dreams of. Red Bull wants you. You'll be teammates with Max Verstappen, arguably the fastest driver on the planet. Most would be ecstatic. Most would think they're ready to take on the world champion. But Isaac Hajar, he's planning to get absolutely destroyed. And that might just be the smartest approach anyone's ever taken to the Red Bull second seat. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating psychological approaches to Formula One we've ever seen. Hajar's promotion from Racing Bulls to the main Red Bull team has everyone talking, but it's not his speed that's caught my attention. It's his mindset. And if you stick around until the end, I'll reveal why this counterintuitive strategy might finally break the curse that's haunted Red Bull's second seat for 7 long years. Let's start with the elephant in the room. The Red Bull's second seat has become Formula One's graveyard of dreams. Since Daniel Ricciardo left in 2018, we've watched driver after driver get chewed up and spat out by the pressure of being Max Verstappen's teammate. Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Sergio Perez, Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda. Some incredibly talented drivers, all struggling to consistently match the pace of their Dutch teammate. The pattern is always the same. A promising driver gets promoted. They arrive with confidence, believing they can challenge Max immediately. Reality hits hard. The gap is bigger than expected. Frustration builds. Performance deteriorates. Before you know it, they're either demoted or dropped entirely. Only Perez managed to survive for multiple seasons, and even he eventually succumbed to the pressure in 2024 when Red Bull's car development moved away from his driving style. But here's where it gets interesting. Hajar knows all this. He's studied the graveyard, and instead of thinking he'll be different, instead of believing he's the chosen one who will finally match Verstappen from day one, he's doing something revolutionary. He's accepting defeat before he even gets in the car. This isn't defeatism, this is strategic psychology at its finest. In Abu Dhabi, Hajar laid out his approach with refreshing honesty. He expects to be slower than Max for the first month. He's prepared to be frustrated. He's mentally ready to look at data that shows lap times he can't achieve yet. Most drivers would never admit this publicly, but Hajar is wearing it like armor. Think about the psychological pressure that's crushed his predecessors. They arrived expecting to compete immediately. When they couldn't match Max's pace, it created a snowball effect of mental deterioration. Confidence shattered. Doubt crept in. Performance spiraled downward. But what if you remove that pressure entirely by accepting the reality up front? Hajar's approach is brilliant because it's rooted in truth. Max Verstappen isn't just fast. He's adaptable. He doesn't have one specific driving style that works only with certain cars. He molds himself to whatever machine he's given, extracting maximum performance regardless of the conditions. This is what separates champions from merely talented drivers. Hajar recognizes this and isn't pretending otherwise. The timing couldn't be better for this psychological experiment. Formula One is undergoing its biggest regulation change in decades for 2026. New power units, completely different aerodynamics, revolutionary car designs. This means Max won't have the advantage of knowing the current car better than his teammate. Everyone starts from scratch with the new regulations. This levels the playing field in ways we haven't seen since Max's early career. When asked about this advantage, Hajar called it the best timing possible, saying he feels incredibly lucky with how he's joining Red Bull. If the new car development goes in a particular direction, he'll be part of that journey from the beginning, not trying to catch up to years of accumulated knowledge. But even with this regulatory reset, Hajar isn't kidding himself about Verstappen's abilities. He knows Max will adapt to the new cars just as effectively as he has to every previous generation. The four-time world champion doesn't rely on familiarity. He relies on an almost supernatural ability to extract performance from any racing machine. This is where Hajar's self-critical nature becomes an asset rather than a burden. Throughout his rookie season with Racing Bulls, one thing became crystal clear to anyone watching. This kid is harder on himself than any external critic could ever be. After sessions where he scored points or performed well, you'd often see him frustrated because he knew he'd left time on the table somewhere. Most drivers try to project confidence and hide their weaknesses. Hajar does the opposite. He openly discusses his limitations, acknowledges where he needs to improve, and sets realistic expectations for his development. This level of self-awareness is rare in any sport, but especially in Formula One, where ego and bravado often rule the day. His Racing Bulls season provides the foundation for this realistic self-assessment. A podium finish at Zandvoort, regular point-scoring performances, and consistent improvement throughout the year. But Hajar knows the difference between performing well in a midfield car and competing with Max Verstappen in championship-contending machinery. The step up isn't just about car performance. It's about the microscopic margins that separate good from extraordinary. The psychology of accepting inferiority might sound counterproductive, but it's actually liberating. When you're not desperately trying to prove you belong from day one, you can focus on learning and improving. When you're not devastated by being outperformed initially, you can study the data objectively and work on closing the gap systematically. Compare this to the mindset Hajar describes seeing in his predecessors. They arrived thinking they were special, believing they could immediately challenge the best driver on the grid. Reality crushed those expectations quickly, creating a psychological spiral that became impossible to escape. Pride prevented them from accepting their initial limitations, which made learning and improvement much harder. Hajar's approach acknowledges that Max Verstappen is currently operating at a level that took years to develop. The Dutchman didn't become a four-time world champion overnight. He built his skills through experience, setbacks, and continuous learning. Expecting to match that immediately isn't confidence, it's delusion. The key insight here is that accepting short-term inferiority can actually accelerate long-term development. When you're not crushed by initial defeats, you can analyze them productively. When you're not defending your ego, you can absorb lessons from a superior competitor. When you're not pretending to be at a level you haven't reached yet, you can focus on the work needed to actually get there. This doesn't mean Hajar lacks ambition or competitive fire. He still wants to win races and compete for championships, but he's realistic about the timeline for reaching that level. He's planning a marathon, not expecting to win a sprint. In Formula One's pressure cooker environment, this might be exactly the mindset needed to survive and eventually thrive. Red Bull has clearly identified something special in Hajar's psychological makeup. His extreme self-criticism, his realistic self-assessment, his willingness to accept difficult truths about his current limitations. These aren't weaknesses to overcome, they're strengths that could help him navigate the unique pressures of being Max's teammate. The regulation changes give him a window of opportunity, but his mindset gives him the tools to actually capitalize on it. Instead of being crushed by early defeats, he's prepared for them. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, he's planning to use the frustration as motivation for improvement. Instead of pretending he belongs at Max's level immediately, he's creating space to actually develop toward that target. So here's my prediction. Isack Hajar will not immediately challenge Max Verstappen. He'll be slower in the early races of 2026. He'll have moments of frustration studying data that shows gaps he can't yet close. And because he's prepared for all of this, because he's not devastated by these realities, he'll be able to learn and improve in ways his predecessors couldn't. The Red Bull second seat has claimed so many promising careers because drivers arrived with the wrong expectations. They thought they were ready for something they weren't prepared for. Hajar is different. He knows he's not ready yet, and that knowledge might just be what finally allows someone to get ready. Whether this psychological approach will actually work remains to be seen. Formula One is ultimately about lap times, not mindset. But in a sport where mental strength often determines who can extract those crucial extra tenths of a second, Hajar's realistic self-awareness might prove to be his greatest weapon. What do you think about Hajar's approach? Is accepting short-term defeat the key to long-term success, or does a champion need unwavering self-belief from day one? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this deep dive into Formula One psychology intrigued you, make sure to subscribe for more analysis that goes beyond the surface level of racing. Until next time, keep questioning everything you think you know about what it takes to succeed at the highest level of motorsport. Picture this. Formula One's newest world champion steps up to collect his trophy, hair perfectly styled, ready for his moment of glory. Then the FIA president playfully messes up his hair, and what happens next becomes the most entertaining award ceremony moment of the year. This is the story of how Lando Norris almost got slapped with a €5,000 fine for two little words that had everyone laughing. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix had just wrapped up, delivering one of the most spectacular endings to a Formula One season we've seen in years. Lando Norris had finally done it, securing his first world championship after years of being the nearly man of Formula One. The 26-year-old British driver crossed the finish line in third place, but that was enough to seal the title that had eluded him for so long. What made this championship even more special was that Norris became the 11th British world champion and the first driver to bring McLaren a driver's title since Lewis Hamilton achieved the feat back in 2008. The Papaya Army had waited 17 long years for this moment, and their patience had finally been rewarded. Fast forward to Friday night in Uzbekistan, where the annual FIA prize-giving gala was taking place. This is where champions are officially crowned, speeches are made, and usually everything goes according to protocol. But Norris had other plans, though probably not intentionally. The scene was set perfectly. Mohammed bin Sulayem, the FIA president, welcomed Norris onto the stage with all the pomp and ceremony you'd expect for a newly crowned world champion. But then came the playful moment that would set the tone for everything that followed. Ben Sulayem reached over and ruffled Norris's carefully styled hair, creating an instant moment of levity that had the audience chuckling. Norris, being the good sport that he is, took the hair ruffling in stride and began his acceptance speech. He started off thanking everyone, expressing his pleasure at being in Uzbekistan for the first time, and even joked about his now messy hair. Everything was going smoothly until he got to the part about reflecting on the season. This is where things got interesting. Norris began talking about McLaren's journey throughout the year, acknowledging both the highs and the lows. He wanted to be honest about their path to success, admitting that it hadn't all been smooth sailing. And that's when he dropped the bomb, casually mentioning that McLaren had their fair share of mistakes and, well, let's just say he used a particularly colorful word that rhymes with truck. The moment those words left his mouth, you could sense the energy in the room shift. There was a brief pause, then laughter, and then Ben Sulayem's immediate response that had everyone in stitches. The FIA president quickly chimed in with 5,000, referencing the notorious fine that the governing body has been known to impose on drivers for using inappropriate language in professional settings. But here's where the story gets even better. Instead of actually issuing the fine, Ben Sulayem turned the whole thing into a masterclass in diplomatic humor. He joked that while he had considered handing Norris a €5,000 penalty for his choice of words, he thought the money might be better spent on sorting out the world champion's hair after he had messed it up. This moment perfectly encapsulated the lighter side of Formula One that fans love to see. Here was the sport's governing body president, someone who could have easily turned this into a serious disciplinary matter, instead choosing to embrace the humor of the situation and create a memorable moment that everyone could laugh about. Norris, realizing what had just happened, played along beautifully. When he was later asked about the intensity of the championship battle and accidentally let slip another inappropriate word, he immediately caught himself and joked about being able to afford the fine now that he was world champion. The self-awareness and quick wit showed exactly why fans have fallen in love with his personality over the years. The whole incident highlighted something fascinating about the current state of Formula One. The sport has been grappling with the balance between maintaining professionalism and allowing drivers to show their authentic personalities. The FIA has been strict about language in official settings, but this moment showed that there's room for flexibility and human moments, even in the most formal circumstances. What made this story even more compelling was the context of Norris's championship victory. This wasn't just any title win. This was the culmination of years of near misses, heartbreaks, and gradual improvement. Norris had been knocking on the door of greatness for so long that when he finally broke through, the emotion was genuine and overwhelming. Throughout his speech, Norris paid tribute to everyone who had been part of his journey. He thanked McLaren for providing him with a car capable of winning races, praised his teammate Oscar Piastri for pushing him to improve and helping make McLaren a championship-winning team again, and even acknowledged Max Verstappen for the intense battle they had throughout the season. The emotional weight of the moment was evident when Norris talked about living out his childhood dream. He mentioned remembering being on stage years earlier, looking up to drivers like Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel, and Fernando Alonso, never quite believing he'd one day be holding the same trophy they had won. This vulnerability made his momentary lapse in language even more endearing to the audience. Here was someone who had just achieved the pinnacle of motorsport success standing in front of the sport's most important officials, and he was being completely authentic about the roller coaster journey it had taken to get there. The incident also shed light on Ben Sulayem's leadership style. Rather than being the strict disciplinarian that some might expect from someone in his position, he showed that he understands the human element of the sport. His decision to turn a potential fine into a moment of shared laughter demonstrated emotional intelligence and an appreciation for the celebration that these ceremonies are meant to be. Looking at the bigger picture, this story represents something beautiful about Formula One in its current era. Despite all the corporate interests, massive budgets, and serious competition, there's still room for genuine human moments. The fact that this interaction between Norris and Ben Sulayem became such a talking point shows that fans crave these authentic glimpses behind the polished exterior of the sport. The technical regulations might be getting more complex, the politics more intricate, and the stakes higher than ever. But moments like this remind us that at its heart, Formula One is still about people. It's about drivers who started as kids with dreams, team members who work tirelessly toward shared goals, and officials who understand that sometimes the best way to handle a situation is with humor rather than harsh penalties. As Norris continues his journey as world champion, this moment will likely become part of his legacy, not just as the guy who almost got fined for swearing at his own championship ceremony, but as someone who brought authenticity and humor to one of the sport's most formal occasions. In a world where everything is often scripted and sanitized, sometimes a little unfiltered honesty is exactly what everyone needs. What happens when a Formula One driver crashes 3 times in the exact same spot during testing? Today, we're diving deep into Jack Doohan's bizarre Super Formula testing nightmare and what it reveals about his desperate fight to stay in motorsport's elite tier. Picture this. You're a 22-year-old racing driver who just lost your Formula One seat. Your career is hanging by a thread. You fly halfway across the world to Japan for what could be your lifeline, and then you crash. Same corner, same problem. 3 times. This isn't fiction. This is exactly what happened to Jack Doohan at Suzuka, and the story behind these crashes tells us everything about the current state of Formula One's driver market. Let me take you back to where this all began. Jack Doohan was supposed to be the next big thing. Son of motorcycle legend Mick Doohan, he climbed the racing ladder with impressive performances in Formula 2 and seemed destined for Formula One stardom. Alpine gave him his shot, and for a brief moment, it looked like the Australian had made it. But Formula One is ruthless, and after just a handful of races, Doohan found himself without a seat for the upcoming season. Instead of giving up, Doohan made a bold move. He decided to head to Japan and explore Super Formula, one of the most competitive single-seater series outside of Formula One. The plan was simple: join Kondo Racing, stay race sharp, and position himself for a Formula One return in the future. What he didn't expect was to become the center of one of the most puzzling testing stories of recent memory. The Suzuka circuit is legendary. This is where some of motorsport's greatest moments have unfolded, where legends are made and dreams are shattered. The track demands respect, precision, and perfect car setup. For Doohan, it became the stage for a mystery that would have engineers scratching their heads. Here's what happened. During the 3-day Super Formula test, Doohan experienced 3 separate crashes, all at the same corner. Degner 1. This isn't just any corner we're talking about. Degner 1 is a fast right-hander that requires absolute confidence in your car's front end. It's the kind of corner where you need to attack the curbing to find the ultimate lap time, but one wrong move and you're in the barriers. The crashes weren't random accidents or driver errors in the traditional sense. Each incident followed an identical pattern. As Doohan approached Degner 1 and hit the curbing, the front end of his Dallara SF23 would start bouncing uncontrollably. The car would become unstable through the apex, and despite his best efforts to keep it on track, the physics would win, sending him into the barriers. 3 times. Same corner, same problem, same result. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like a driver who can't adapt to a new car or a new series, but that theory doesn't hold water when you dig deeper into what was actually happening behind the scenes at Kondo Racing. During this test, Sources close to the team revealed that Doohan was sampling both of Kondo Racing's cars across the 3 days. But more importantly, the team was conducting extensive setup experimentation. They were trying different suspension configurations, aerodynamic packages, and mechanical setups to understand what would work best for the upcoming season. This is where the story gets really interesting. The crashes weren't necessarily a reflection of Doohan's driving ability. Instead, they appeared to be the consequence of an experimental approach to car setup that simply didn't work at one of Suzuka's most demanding corners. Think about it from an engineering perspective. When you're testing different setups, you're essentially playing with variables that affect how the car behaves. Change the front suspension settings, and suddenly the car might react differently to curbing. Adjust the aerodynamic balance, and the front end might become unpredictable in high-speed corners. What Doohan experienced was likely the result of setups that simply weren't suited to the specific demands of Degner 1. The fact that all 3 crashes happened in the same location with the same characteristics suggests a fundamental issue with how the car was handling that particular corner. It wasn't bad luck or poor driving. It was a systematic problem that repeated itself because the underlying issue wasn't immediately identified and resolved. But here's what makes this story even more compelling. Despite these setbacks, team boss Nobuaki Adachi remained optimistic about Doohan's potential. In his comments to the media, Adachi emphasized that both Doohan and fellow tester Luke Browning had performed very well overall. He acknowledged that the crashes were unfortunate, but stressed that Doohan showed significant promise as a driver. Adachi's perspective is crucial because it reveals something important about how professional motorsport teams evaluate drivers. They don't judge talent based solely on whether crashes happen during testing. Instead, they look at the bigger picture: how quickly a driver adapts, how well they communicate feedback, and whether they show the fundamental speed and racecraft that defines elite drivers. The timing of these tests also matters. December testing at Suzuka presents unique challenges. The weather conditions are significantly different from the main racing season, track temperatures are lower, and grip levels can be unpredictable. These factors can amplify any setup issues and make it even more difficult to find the right balance for the car. For Doohan, these crashes represent more than just testing setbacks. They're part of a larger story about his fight to remain relevant in top-level motorsport. After losing his Alpine Formula One seat, Super Formula represents his best opportunity to stay race-sharp and demonstrate that he deserves another shot at the highest level. The connection between Super Formula and Formula One has never been stronger. Many of today's top Formula One drivers, including Pierre Gasly and Nyck de Vries, have used Super Formula as a stepping stone or a way to maintain their skills between Formula One opportunities. The series offers incredibly competitive racing with high-quality machinery that shares many characteristics with Formula One cars. What makes Doohan's situation particularly intriguing is the potential connection to Haas Formula One team. Reports suggest that his Super Formula move could be linked to a reserve driver role with Haas for the upcoming Formula One season. This wouldn't just be about staying active in motorsport. It would be about positioning himself for a potential return to a race seat. The Haas connection becomes even more interesting when you consider Toyota's expanding involvement with the American team. Toyota has been increasing its technical collaboration with Haas, and this relationship could provide opportunities for drivers who are part of Toyota's motorsport programs, including those competing in Super Formula. Think about the strategic brilliance of this approach. By joining a Toyota-backed Super Formula team, Doohan isn't just getting seat time in competitive machinery. He's potentially integrating himself into a network that could lead directly back to Formula One. It's a long-term play that shows sophisticated career management. But let's be honest about the challenges Doohan faces. Kondo Racing finished 7th in the team's championship during the previous season, with just one podium to their name. This isn't one of the powerhouse teams that dominate Super Formula. For a driver trying to rebuild his reputation, joining a midfield team presents both opportunities and risks. The opportunity lies in the potential to make a significant impact. If Doohan can help elevate condo racing's performance and deliver strong results, it would demonstrate his value as a driver who can maximize whatever machinery he's given. Formula One teams pay attention to drivers who can overperform relative to their equipment. The risk is that poor results, regardless of the reason, could further damage his reputation and make a Formula One return even more difficult. In motorsport, perception often matters as much as reality, and a struggling season in Super Formula could be interpreted as evidence that Doohan isn't ready for Formula One's demands. What's particularly interesting about Doohan's approach is that he's reportedly viewing Super Formula as primarily about staying race sharp, rather than achieving specific results. This mindset makes sense for someone who hasn't raced since the Miami Grand Prix and is targeting a Formula One return. Regular competition, even in a different series, helps maintain the reflexes, racecraft, and mental sharpness that define professional drivers. The motorsport world will be watching closely to see how Doohan's Super Formula campaign unfolds. His testing crashes at Suzuka, while concerning on the surface, might actually provide valuable learning experiences that help him and the team find better setups for the season ahead. Looking at the bigger picture, Doohan's story reflects the harsh realities of modern Formula One. With only 20 seats available and enormous commercial pressures influencing driver selections, even talented drivers can find themselves on the outside looking in. The key to survival is adaptability, persistence, and smart career management. Super Formula offers Doohan a chance to demonstrate all three qualities. If he can overcome the early testing setbacks, develop a strong relationship with condo racing, and deliver competitive performances throughout the season, he'll position himself as a serious candidate for future Formula One opportunities. The 3 crashes at Degner 1 might look embarrassing in isolation, but they're actually part of a larger story about resilience, adaptation, and the relentless pursuit of excellence that defines professional motorsport. For Jack Doohan, the real test isn't whether he can avoid crashing during testing. It's whether he can use these experiences to become a better driver and find his way back to Formula One's grid. The next few months will be crucial in determining whether this Super Formula gambit pays off or becomes another chapter in the long list of promising careers that couldn't quite make it to the top of motorsport's mountain.